Okay, go.
This is Richard Kaufman, and you are watching the Break It Down show. So break
Yeah, Richard.
it down.
It's the Pete's coming straight at you. And Richard Kaufman has one of the most highly regarded veteran podcasts in the world. And so we always try to take care of one another. And I thought we would have Richard on. But I have a question that's burning it up. Why do you always wear a hat when you record shows?
Well, about 4 or 5 years ago, when I first started getting into helping people that were struggling with PTSD and TBIs, me and my wife went to go see the movie called American Sniper about Chris Kyle. And it moved me so much when I got home, I got in touch with his wife and his family. And I told him that every live or every interview I ever do, I'll wear a hat in honor of Chris, just so people don't forget him and his legacy, but also to remind people that there are people out there like me and you that sometimes are willing to die just to make sure that you're okay. So that's why I do it in honor of Chris.
Nice. Yeah, that movie I identified with a lot because I lived all of the bad things that has happened to Chris, except for getting shot and then being shot and killed. Pretty much everything else happened to me. You know, RPGs launched at me, RKG3s thrown at me. I mean, hand grenades, everything, right? All that stuff happens, and it takes a toll after time. We had Doc Springer on the show on Monday, and she's doing a lot to help us figure out PTSD, to include some modern technology that's going to help us see it and treat it better.
And her book is amazing, Warrior. I love it. And I'm actually going to be able to hang out with her in April. So her book is rocking. It's called Warrior. So guys, check it out.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit about your background. There's so many people that have talked about all of it before. So just kind of give us the short version, and then Pete and I are going to lay into you with some good questions.
All right. The short version is I have come back from drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, now blindness, been thrown out of the military once, and got back in and retired after 20 plus years. So my story is just a story of coming back and not quitting, and now helping others realize that they don't have to quit. They can keep going. And there's people like us. I always say us, never me, that are there for you to lift you up. I always talk about, giving hands up, never a hand out.
Richard, I had the opportunity to learn a little bit about you before this podcast today, and then I just heard your list of sort of what you've been through. It sounds like 5 lifetimes, not one. And the part about your involvement in the military, I'm curious to know when you when you joined the military, and what were the circumstances around that, and how did that affect your life? And I'll tell you one quick bit before we go. When I was a senior in high school, there was a kid in our class, and I was lucky that I had a path as an athlete to go to and get an athletic scholarship and go to college. But I was very lucky that way. There was one kid in particular in our class who he was troubled, and he was absolutely rudderless. I don't know what was going on in his home, but nothing seemed to work for him, and he was a knucklehead. And then one day, the biggest knucklehead you could think of, slacker, non-athletic, non-focused, he said, he shows up one day and he goes, "I joined the Marines." And he was one class ahead of me. Check that story. So he came back 8 months later in his uniform and walked into the high school. He was a different human being. And I mean superior, 10, 20 times over. The transformation was absolutely stunning to see in person. You could see this like in a movie. You see the guy overcome. But anyway, I drone on. But could you tell me how the military impacted your life as a young man?
Oh, well, I dropped out. First of all, I had my first drink at 12, and I was a full blown alcoholic by the age of 13. and I dropped out of high school as a freshman, so I only have 9 years. I dropped out in the ninth grade, so I only have a ninth grade formal education. Um, and I decided, it's either jail or it's the military. So I chose the military, and I still wound up in jail while in the military. So I kind of did both. I became a drug addict and alcoholic in the military. After 2.5 years, Uncle Sam didn't want me as his nephew anymore, so he booted my ass out. And then I felt like there was some unfinished business after I started. I got my last drink was January 1st, 1989. So my last drug or drink was 89, so 30 something years ago. And I decided to rejoin the military, and because there was some unfinished, in my mind there was unfinished business, and I was due to be thrown out again for the second time, not for drinking, but just excuse my language for cursing. I try not to curse, but it's the only way I can get it across. I was still an asshole, and I got busted a couple more times, so they were due to throw me out on the end of September of 2001. But the morning of September 11th, 2001, totally changed my life and the whole trajectory of my life. They decided to keep me, thank God. I got busted from E4 to E1 for like the fifth time. But this time, I started sticking with the winners. And within 4 years, I became Soldier of the Year. I became a non-commissioned officer, and I finished with over 20 years in the military.
Wow. So, I think the story the moral of that story, I think that I gleaned from it is it took two people. It took the military and it took you to prove that, a second chance can really save somebody, and not only save you, but the country appreciates your service. The military appreciates our society. Our country appreciates your service, and you couldn't have done it alone. You needed a partner, and you two found each other and struggled and fought, and it looks like it worked out for both.
In the end, it did, but I had to change my mindset. And as of the morning of September 11th, really changed my life. Because where I'm sitting right now, I can overlook the Twin Towers where I'm sitting.
Oh,
we all know that were there that day. So that day broke me, and that's the day I became a changed man, where I decided to no longer live for myself, but to help people that can not help themselves. So that's when my whole life and trajectory changed on the morning of September 11th, 2001.
Richard, that's a big change, right? I mean, you were getting busted down. You were not someone who's supposed to stay in the Army twice. You were damn near out. It almost seems like the hand of God came twice. Yes, twice. And you and I both know what that means, but for the audience, this means that Richard was a shitbag. No one in his unit wanted him around. He was a problem. They were having to have meetings behind his back to decide how to deal with him. He was taking up a lot of resources. And so they saw something in you to keep you around. I mean, otherwise they would have just replaced you a long time before. But when did you in yourself believe? Like, it's one thing to say, I turned the corner that day, but you still got to walk this hard path. You still have to win back the respect of your peers and your unit. When did you know that you really had done it? When did it really settle in that, like, yeah, E2, E3, E4, E5, none of this matters. Nothing's stopping now. I get it now.
It would have to be when, now, like I said, I've been busted. I probably got 4, 5, 6 Article 15s and a couple field grades. So I was not the best guy. I was the guy that was in your platoon that you hated. The guy that was the shitbag, the guy that was always late for formation, looking like he slept in his uniform, long hair. That was me. But when that morning came, because as I'm watching the towers fall, all my TA-50 is alongside of the TV because I got to turn all my stuff in because I'm being thrown out again. And something broke in me that day, because what happened was I'm watching, I seen, it was when it first happened, they didn't censor anything. So you can actually see people jumping out of the buildings and hitting the ground. And then they panned off to the Pentagon, where soldiers were being taken out in body bags. And here I am getting thrown out for the second time and not appreciating what I have and what God had given me. And I became a broken man. And that day is when it finally hit me. And I begged my company commander, which he's a friend of mine now, which is weird. And he's seen something in me. And from that day on is when I decided, nothing's going to stop me now. I made a decision, because that's where today I decide came from, that I made the decision that I'm going to start living my life for others and not for myself. And that's one thing I think, even when I'm out of the military, I always believed in the NCO creed, and I still always believe in lifting others up before myself. So that day is when it all changed, literally like this. The mindset just switched over in a second.
When did you earn back the respect of your peers and your folks in your military side, in your unit? Because that's a different thing, right? You can be better, but they don't have to realize it.
Now, one thing that was saved my ass, I will say, when I was in the 2.5 years in the military, regular active duty and National Guard, is I was a shit soldier in the rear. But if you got me out into the field, I was the soldier you wanted. I was the guy that would go down range 15, 18 hours at a time. I was the guy that would do the dirty work and get it all done. So you loved me on your tank because I was that guy. But when I got back in the rear, I was a total waste. So it took me, when we got deployed, they actually sent me to another company because they thought I was going to be such a shitbag that I was going to get thrown out. And that's when I actually earned my stripes with a whole other company.
And that was like a clean slate for you.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's where you found yourself.
Yep. And then, and it's funny that when I got back from the deployment, it was my people that were trying to get me thrown out. They're the ones that actually pinned me and got me my my rank and actually sent me up to be soldier of the year. So it was a complete turnaround. Thank God.
That's awesome. And and I know you do a military veteran oriented, podcast yourself, and is your story sounds like one that young soldiers could really benefit from. It's a great story for a guy like me who never served to hear, because I can just relate to that in civilian life. Of course, the risks and the dangers involved in the military are so implicit to the power of your story. It's quite different, but I think that well, let's face it, the military at any given time has got young people struggling to find where they fit in, and I'm sure you've got a great story that and I would hope that you've shared that many times over the years to inspire people that join the military and find themselves in a place where they're not thriving, they're not handling it right.
Yeah, I mean, but the podcast is never about me. I'm the guy that would rather interview people because they call me the veteran Oprah, because I want people to talk about stuff that they were never planning on talking about. But something that Gary Vee told me when I met him a couple of years ago, that if you promote your friends 10 times more than you promote yourself, you never got to promote yourself. So I'm the guy that's always promoting others, and I never think about my story. But now about a month and a half ago, we had something called a veteran social, and I had to do a video for my life story. And because I'm blind, if you guys don't know this, I'm blind. So I had to put the video out on YouTube in order for it to get downloaded. And all of a sudden it went viral. And now it got so popular that now we're holding our own mental health summit called Today I Decide on April 3rd. But that's the only, I never like talking about myself because, it's not, some people say it's a great story, but it's just my story. So I don't think it's that remarkable.
Well, it is a great story, Richard, and that's what Pete and Pete are here for, to drag it out of you and make sure that that people are aware of it. It's outstanding.
Well, as long as I can inspire somebody and as long as they can realize, hey, if that idiot can make it, then, that makes it all worth it. If somebody can say, all right, he made it, I think I can do it too.
The PTSD and the TBI part, right? These are things that guys like us have to deal with. I mean, I've got PTSD and get treatment for it all the time, which gives me suicidal ideation, all of these things. And the reason why I say these things openly is because you can't fear the truth of these things, because the person behind me who's not as well situated, who hasn't gone to the VA, who doesn't realize maybe there's something wrong because they act inappropriately at different times, I want that person to know that, hey, look, here I am, in Orange County. My life is fairly stable. Everything is pretty damned good. Guys like Richard and I, we've done this, and you can't fear that negative outcome of saying, I took drugs, I drank, I was a shithead, I was, a bad soldier in garrison, because if you fear that, then you can't be honest with the people that really need the help. The folks who are in less in need of help, they're doing other things, but to talk to those folks who are like earlier versions of us, that's a powerful message, man. And if no one else says this because you don't like to promote yourself, let me tell you, thank you for what you do, because we all need you being honest and telling these stories with us.
Well, I did it. I did stuff the way you're not supposed to do it. I was on, because I've only been doing podcasting probably about 2 years, maybe 2 years. And one of my friends, I was on a podcast. His name is Donnie Boyven of Success Champions. And he was like one of the first guys to interview me. And I was telling him about what I was doing, because at this whole time that in the military, I've always worked at a GNC or a vitamin shop. I worked with guys from the WWE, Major League Baseball, NFL, and I wanted to talk about that story. Then I told Donnie about my backstory, and he's like, "Well, that's what needs to be told. That's what people need to hear." And he said, "Why don't you go write a book?" And I'm like, "Write a book? Who wants to hear my story?" But what I did is I just did all the grimy crap that I've ever done, wrote it all in a book and published it. So this way it's out there, and I can get that 60-pound rucksack off my back, and I don't have to deal with that stuff anymore because it's out in public already. So, if anybody says, Rich, you were a drug addict. Yeah, but I got 30 years clean. And, or they say, you used to steal, you used to eat out of garbage cans, you were homeless. Yeah, but I live in a $500,000 house. I got a beautiful wife and 3 kids. So if I can change, you can change. So that's where the whole comeback coach started. And that's where the whole trying to get my story out there that, my tagline is, everybody loves a comeback story. Today is your day. Because if Rocky would have never came back and won the title in Rocky 2, nobody would ever watch Rocky 3. So everybody loves a comeback story.
And has the podcasting, how did what was your incentive to begin your own podcast?
Well, what happened was, I was, like I said, I was in the health and fitness industry. So I would continuously get all new products and try new products. So it just started out as reviewing different products on it. Huh. And then I lost my vision January 30th. It's coming up on a year. And I had to pivot. I could no longer be in the store. I can no longer be in the health and fitness industry. So I'm like, hey, why don't I just take this podcast and do something with it? So I started, interviewing my friends, which are veterans, and then they just grew, and now I get the honor of talking to Brent Gleason, Navy SEALs. I get to talk to John McCaskill, Navy SEAL commanders, General Petraeus, and it's just grown, and it's just something that it's a passion for. I don't make any money off of it on purpose. I got 20 sponsors, but I don't make any money off of it on purpose.
And why not?
Because my goal is to I have t-shirts. I got hats. I got my book. I have merch that I make and I sell, and everything
Oh,
I do, every single penny goes to help veterans and first responders struggle
oh,
with PTSD and TBI.
that's fantastic. Wow. So, and that's interesting. So you, but just to follow the path. So at a certain point, you sort of abandoned the vitamin supplement product review angle of your podcast, and now it's all about private military.
Well, no, now I'm actually opening it up again. Like I
Oh,
just and you're the first show that's I'm ever dropping this on. We
There you go. Breaking news.
we're getting sponsored by the #1 supplement company in the world. I just signed a sponsorship today, and
Fantastic.
so
congratulations.
I'm realizing these people that I'm interviewing, all the highly successful people have they're doing other things. They're keeping their bodies healthy, and if a body's healthy, the mind gets healthy. So now I'm incorporating the mind, the body, and soul into the podcast.
Cool. Hey, I want to also take a moment to check out Pete's the Swede shirts that he's pushing out, and he's done a lot for veterans. He's got his on, I've got mine on. Pete's wearing the Swede. It's cool to be able to do that. Pete, really quick, tell us about your T-shirts and what you're doing with those.
Well, I mean, just a quick way to work into it is, I'm listening to Rickards' story, real life guy that gets into the military and as a young man is floundering and gets kicked out, and then decides he wants to he's got, I think to use his own words, unresolved business, unfinished business, gets back into the who does this? Gets back into the military somehow or another, eventually finds the place where he needs to be, finds the right leader, the right circumstances, the right job, I suppose, so that he can thrive, becomes decorated, becomes soldier of the year. And I love that story like crazy. 30 something years ago, as a very young actor in Hollywood, I had the great fortune to be cast by Clint Eastwood himself to play a character called the Swede in a movie called Heartbreak Ridge. And there's a picture from the film that I've put on a shirt. If you've seen the movie, very simply, about an hour into the movie, the Swede character gets out of the brig. The soldiers have been talking about him because, and he's a big guy, I'm a big guy, and he was going to take down Clint Eastwood because why would Swede do that? Because that's what he does. That's all. He's not a good guy. And Clint gives him a second chance to redeem. It gives him a chance to redeem himself. It's a story. It's not the entire story of Heartbreak Ridge. It's a love story also between Clint and a woman that he loves, and it's about troops working together. But one part of the story of Heartbreak Ridge is about second chances. It's a big part of the movie, big theme of the film. And Richard, I think, is the real life. He might be the real life Swede in his own way. So I've been, for many years, I God bless the military. I never served, but I've had thousands upon thousands of prior and active military reach out to me and say, man, I loved you in Heartbreak Ridge. It was because of you that I joined the Marine Corps, which is makes my heart heavy with responsibility at times. But and some people said, you should put your face on a shirt or a hat or do something. So I did. So I said, you can go to my website, PeteKoch.com. And if you want a shirt, won't set you back won't break the bank, and I'll send you a shirt. So I did it because it was requested for so long. It's like a novelty item, I guess. But Swede has got a following all these years. So far, it's never gone away. And it's my little way of saying thank you and honoring you. And like I always say, like I say this to Pete Turner, I say this to you, Richard. Thank you for your service. You're the real deal.
Well, thank you, Pete. And how about I have you on my show?
That would be my great pleasure.
Now, like I said, I was always that dirtbag that would be late for formation every day. Now, after 9/11, When I moved to New Jersey, you know how when you move to different states, you're still in like I moved to New Jersey, but I was still in the South Carolina National Park. When we had drill, I would drive 14 hours there just to make drill on time. And then I would drive 14 hours back home. And I was never late never missed a formation, was never late for a formation in a whole year that I was in the state of New Jersey.
Wow.
Damn.
You've got a very particular kind of wiring in your head.
So my guys would be calling me. They're like, Sarge, I can't make it. I'm like, bullshit. If I just drove 14 hours, your ass can make it to drill.
Yeah, I'm curious, man. What kind of NCO were you? I mean, and first off, just so everybody knows, when Richard's talking about being good in the field versus like me when I'm in the field, I'm literally in town drinking hot chocolate and role playing that I'm talking to the mayor because that's what spies do. He's on the back of a tank doing shit that real army people do. I'm in the army, but I get to have a nice time, maybe grow a little beard. You know, you're doing hard work. What kind of NCO were you? Who did you emulate?
Well, one of my I've had a couple of great NCOs in my life. One of whom he just passed of liver failure. Sergeant Robert Shepard. He was the guy that if everybody was the whole company was having a bad day, he was the one guy that you knew that he was going to be up and cheery. So I went from being the guy that was always aggravated, mean, nasty, negative. I was the guy that I would get up with the chickens in the morning. I would start singing off the back of my tank to wake everybody up. And people knew that if my morale's down, the place is going to shit. Mm. So I was the guy that kept the morale up for the whole company. And I was also the guy, if you needed somebody to talk to, let's go sit at the back of the tank and I'm going to be there for you. Because I was taught early that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's why I've always decided to be that kind of NCO that cares about his troops. And in light, I've had troops willing to literally run through walls for me if they had to.
So did someone actually run through a wall?
They figuratively, literally, yes. When we're on the mount doing some of the mount training, yes.
Oh, good. I like it. One of the things you get into is looking at the how. And I would say this kind of thing to commanders too, as I advise them, because I'd be in town and seeing what's going on. It's like not what you guys are doing as a unit, it's how you're trying to do it. That really matters because along the way from A to F or whatever it takes to finish this operation, I always tell the story about a soldier. We were out in Iraq and we were doing like a medical operation. He's checking in with the community of people. And one of the soldiers took a dump on someone's doorstep. And I'm like, yo, you can't do that, and he didn't have respect for the Iraqis. He didn't have respect enough for someone's home to not poop on his doorstep, and just like this how thing of how you approach these problems, it's hyper important. So talk a little bit about how you discovered the how aspect of what you do, and then explain to us how it works, your how stuff.
It was all with Gary V. Like I said, sometimes my wife would tell me that my balls are bigger than my brains. And so one day I called up, his father owns a liquor store here in New Jersey. So I called him up. I asked him, when's your son going to be around? So whenever his son was around, I just showed up and talked to him for a little bit and got some advice from him. And I couldn't, because I was working, when I moved to New Jersey, I only have a ninth grade education. But I've read over 5,000 books in my lifetime. But I was working literally 6 days a week for the last 10 years. So I couldn't just go get another job to be able to get my story out there. So I figured social media is going to be the best way to get my story out there. And that's how I started going on podcasts, starting my own podcast. Because I had to find a way, or else, I thought, people that needed to hear that it's okay not to be okay, we're not going to make it. So that's the way that's how I decided to do it. It's probably not the right way, but that's how I did it.
And from there, and now you've got a new sponsor, right? The biggest supplement company in the world. So, I mean, you're just building this straight to the top, right?
Yeah, but what it is now me and Mark, the owner, Mark Lazier,
Mhm.
I've been friends with him for the last 10 years.
Oh.
And whenever I would always promote his products because I loved his products. So I've used his products for the last 10 years without asking anything. And then he came on my show last night and we're just like, hey, why don't we just become a sponsor of the show? And he did. But if I didn't forge that relationship 10 years ago, it wouldn't be where it is today. So me, everything that, even people that are watching that know me, I'm all about relationships. I'm all about building friendships. If you come on my podcast, we are going to be friends for life. And so that's the way, my life goes, is everything is about building relationships and having, my friend Stephen Coons calls it relationship capital, but everything in life is about relationships.
Yeah, you're right about that. I had a meeting this morning. I don't know if you know Brian and Jeff Andrews and Wilson, the authors. They're military guys.
Okay.
And, because they've been on the show, we're talking about things outside of the show, projects, things to work on. These relationships that we have an opportunity to create are wonderful. It's one thing to be on social media and to get hits and have them be shallow and, sort of ego serving. It's another thing to have people reach out and want to work with you. Like, I love working with Pete, promoting his approach to fitness and his training, because I believe in what he's doing so desperately. I'm trying to help. I see what you're doing. I want to help, and I want to bring you on the show and give you this platform. That's I think a learned skill, because Richard, it's not always comfortable being that available, waiting 10 years for a relationship to bear some kind of financial fruit. How do you deal with the uncertainty of all of that when you're trying to be goal driven? Because military folks, we're goal driven,
Yeah, well, another thing Gary told me, like I said, I respect Gary a lot. He gets on my nerves a lot with all the cursing and stuff, but that's okay because nobody's perfect. But, he told me that this little nugget, he said, your legacy will always be more valuable than your currency. So that kind of really, that's like the mantra for my life is I'm trying to build a legacy to where, can I tell a short story?
Yeah, man, you got time. Do it.
Well, I've had many great people in my life, many great mentors. I wish I would have listened to them when I was younger, but I didn't. But I had two uncles that they both passed away. One was younger, one was older. The one younger guy, he was a Christian guy. He was always people centric. He was always there for others. And then my older uncle, he was a blue collar guy, went home, went to work, and all about family. They both passed away. One early, my one Christian uncle passed away when he was younger, and everybody showed up at his funeral. They had to have three different, and people were just, he made such an impact. And then my other uncle, he died as an older man, and only the family was there. There were no friends. There was nobody there. And I sat in a chair in the funeral home, and I'm going, who's going to show up at my funeral? What do they say about me? Am I making an impact in this life? And that's when I just decided, I need to start impacting people's lives. I need to change the world. I'm one guy that nobody shows up at their funeral. I want people to show up at my funeral, just making sure that I'm dead. You know what I mean? So that's when I started thinking more legacy than currency. Because I know my other uncle, which he dropped out in the 5th grade, but he retired a multimillionaire. And when he was dying of cancer, and he said, I got all this money, but I don't have time. And so, that he said, I never got to spend time with my kids. So that's when for me, every legacy is everything. So just want to throw that out there for people.
Yeah. And then I wanted to ask, okay, so you go blind, I guess, about a year ago. And here's what I know about us Army guys. I don't give two fucks if you're blind. I'm not going to treat you any differently until you're like, hey, I can't do that because I'm blind. I have not asked you once, are you worried about this or that? You have adapted so fast. Talk about that journey, because it's one thing that, to be blind and have to carry that load, but you've got to rebuild how you live your life. And I've had a number of blind folks on the show, who had to adapt to a new world, and they've all said they're a better person for it.
Yeah. You guys are all around my same age, so you guys remember Mr. Magoo. So I got to use the Mr. Magoo glass to read anything. But one thing being blind will make you do is you start listening a lot more. You start to pay attention to what people say, and you start becoming present in whatever you're doing. Now, I can't drive a car, obviously. I miss driving. I miss being out there. But I had to adapt, and instead of feeling sorry for myself, I had to get into, that's why I really started doing the podcast, because I was in a deep, dark depression just beginning of last year, almost to the point of suicide, but I never got there because I was going through other health issues. But someday, one of my friends, his name is James McNeil, he's got a great book out. You guys should interview him. He's a 2-time suicide survivor. He said, you can either get busy living or get busy dying. And I was like, all right. So I just got off my funk and started saying, all right, I got to get busy living. And that's when I just started, I can't see that great, but I'm blessed to be able to see something. And then I started interviewing people. And I interviewed last year, a guy that, quadruple amputee. He's out skiing. So what excuse do I have? Like, I interviewed a guy last week. He's crippled, but he actually, I don't know what they call it. Forgive me. He's in those Invictus games, and he actually throws those big logs out of a wheelchair, and he's beating able-bodied people. So what is my excuse? See, big shit. I'll adapt and I'll overcome. It's just something else to come back from.
So, Richard, since your blindness, and I'm just curious, from the moment you thought something might be wrong with your vision and to where you were legally blind, how long was that?
It happened on my birthday, January 30th, and I was in surgery February 4th.
Fast.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine the devastation that you felt. I can almost just imagine that at the same time, your doctor says you've got this condition and you're not going to get your sight back. You're losing your sight, or whatever the circumstances and the particulars were. And it would seem to me like at the very same time, if I were the doctor, I think I'd say, oh, and by the way, here's a therapist, because you're probably gonna struggle with this. Did it go like that, or how does that work?
Because I told the doctor, I'm like, all right, just tell me what it is. Give me the down low. Just I'll deal with whatever it is. Don't pussyfoot around it. And he told me, he's like, it might not get better. And I said, all right, got to do. When are we gonna operate? Just do what we got to do. And I'm big. I am a believer in Christ, so I'm a big believer in miracles. So when I got home, I just started looking up scriptures for healing. So I never thought, and I never think that I'm not going to be healed again. I believe that one day I will have full sight, but I'd never. And the day I came home, because I listen to podcasts. I'm not just a podcaster. I listen to podcasts. And one of my mentors is a gentleman named Ed Milet. And he said that, things don't happen to you. They happen for you. And that everything is a teachable moment. And don't ask why me. Ask why not me. Who the hell am I not to have problems? And it changed my mindset. I'm like, all right, it makes sense.
Yeah.
If and I'm not a big Grant Cardone guy. I'm not. but I got his book 10X. And the thing I got out of the whole book was everything that happens, like if you guys are watching this, everything that happens from this moment on is your fault. Whether you win or whether you lose, it's your fault. Because once you stop blaming people for your problems, that's when success really happens.
Yeah, we have a limited series called the Prison Chronicles, and a lot of these guys are murderers or life sentence people who've gotten out. And when they get mentored by these, OGs on the yard, these guys are sages. They are wise like crazy. And then they'll say, listen, young blood, what are you getting more of out of your life? Consequences or rewards? And it's just really, it's up to us to try to build a life that's more full of rewards than consequences. I mean, consequences is heavy when you think about that. Like my actions are netting these consequences, whether I want to accept it or not. Here's the evidence, and how, that's your thing, how we do this, it really matters.
Yeah. And everybody always a lot of people ask me, because I've read so many books, what was my favorite book? And one of the favorite books is the Autobiography of Malcolm X. And one of the reasons why I love it, because as he was sitting in prison, looking at a long time, he says, my body may be in prison, but my mind is free. And, when I started thinking, when you have a mindset like that, that's when you can act, when you're really free, is when you know that your mind is free.
I know it's a massive adjustment to lose your sight and just the way, but I can just hear it in your voice that you're comfortable on your journey. This is just it's just amazing. I don't think I could have the grace that you have if I lost my vision. But it's commendable the way you speak about it, and it's inspirational.
But
True.
I get down a lot. I mean, and if people know me, if you guys know me on Facebook or on social media, I'm the same goofy guy that you're going to see on and off screen. I'm the same goofy guy come up and give you a hug, because that's the kind of guy that I am. So, there's times when I'm down, when I'm depressed, and I'll put out on my social media, I'm having a bad day. And a lot of my people will say, it's okay. You're going to be okay. So that's why, I've been in AA since 89. And the program says that I get drunk, but we stay sober. So because of I call them my peeps, because my peeps, they've kept me from eating my gun plenty of times over this last year. So, sometimes even the strong get weak, but it's just knowing to reach out and still ask for help, even though you're the one that's usually helping others.
So you've got this incredible podcast. You're lauded for it. You're on lists saying, hey, this is a great veteran podcast. All of these things are great. But what really matters are these relationships and the things that you learn. I mean, look, we're coming up on 1,000 episodes here. And when people say, who's your favorite guest? It's impossible because there are too many incredible guests. But if you were to ask me, like, what are some of the things you've learned? Well, I'd have some good answers for that. So I'm going to ask you, what have you learned along the way with all of these, 100+ conversations? What have you learned?
The last question that I ask everybody is, if you know somebody is struggling, what can they do in the next 24 hours to start righting the ship? And almost 90% of the people have told me, just step back and take a breath and realize where you're at and where you want to go. And multiple people told me to get a sheet of paper out, write down a line, put a line down the middle, where you are, where you want to be, and how come you haven't hit where you want to be yet. Because when it's written on paper, then it becomes real. They say a goal is a dream just with a deadline. So that's the main thing I've talked to, like Navy SEAL commanders, authors, athletes, and they're all telling me, sit back. You have to look at your life and figure out, where you've been and where you want to go, but write it down to make sure it's real. Because when you write something down, it becomes real when you see it.
A goal is a dream with a deadline.
Yeah.
That's I hadn't heard it phrased just that way. I love it. Gonna remember that.
The last time Pete was on the show, he was talking about being an NFL player. And Pete, you were talking about how like it's the simple things, like when someone stomps on your foot, and this someone may be 320 pounds and they stomp on your foot, not to cheat or anything, but and maybe, but just be in the motion of the game. It's like having a horse step on your foot with cleats, you know. And
Yeah.
how do you keep your head focused? I mean, in that kind of moment when, and you definitely don't want to grab your foot and do the Fred Flintstone hop around going, ow, 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 you know, like you've got a job to do. And part of that is being, you know, unassailable to your opponent, right? You can't show that. So how do you mentally get through that challenging time when you're tired, you're playing this game, your opposition is just as good as you are? What do you do mentally?
You know, I say this with all deference. I've long thought that there's so many similarities between playing really the most sophisticated of all and physical team sports, football, and the military. And you know, and furthermore, Vince Lombardi said it. He really said something important when he said football's mislabeled as a contact sport. Dancing's a contact sport. Football's a collision sport. And no one dies, but it's very, very physical. And playing a combat sport, most are individual sports, boxing and grappling and wrestling and MMA. Those are combat sports. But this one we do as a team, 11 against 11 at every given time. And it's there's a lot of geometry out there, a lot of speed and a lot of violence. It's very complex. And most people that never played will watch football their whole lives and never understand all the rules, then what all the penalties represent. It's that sophisticated, no less to dig into the details of it. But that's the beauty, you know. It takes many years to get ramped up to the point where you can play in the NFL and really understand the game. The part of the game when I got to the physical part of the game, I was totally prepared for when I got to the NFL, and the nuance, the sophistication of it, I was pretty well mentally equipped for that. But the you know, the tricky part was acting like a pro.
Oh.
And I got to imagine there's something about that resonates with people that are in the military.
Yep.
Because the military is a dangerous job. It's voluntary, but you're not doing it for free. You're a professional, and there's an expectation there that changes everything. And it takes a little time to get your head around that. But once you do, you can understand. You begin to understand why people earn their rank, why athletes earn a new contract that's big, and it go so on and so forth. It's I've heard people say, well, you know, believe me, I've had so many people say to me, well, you know, I could have made it in the NFL, but and then you fill in I hurt my knee when I was in 7th grade. You hurt your knee in 7th grade, but you could have made it to the NFL. I mean, we got to get this guy in a 12-step program. And it's crazy talk, you know? And like, but you know, the fact is that you gotta be able to challenge yourself for a long time and understand, and then try to get to that point. The military doesn't have a college system or a farm system. I mean, it's boot camp, but that seems to me to be woefully short, you know? So you got to grow up. And Richard, your personal story really speaks to the struggles there. I was cut by the first team that drafted me. I struggled for sure. But I got the second chance as you did. And I'm forever grateful. In my case, it was to the Kansas City Chiefs organization that gave me a second chance. And I'm forever grateful in my life. But the lessons that I took away from, in my case, 6 years in the National Football League, I'm forever grateful for. The you know learning the plays and learning how to read defenses and learning how to be a good listener and all those things. I mean, that's all great, but to learn how to act at, within an organization in this day and age, it's a multi-billion-dollar organization to interact, and you're one of only 53 guys. We're all senior level management of this billion-dollar organization, and to how to act and conduct yourself accordingly. In my case, like most guys, it took a little time, but it's an invaluable experience. And that's why so many former NFL players, so many former guys, especially the guys that put in 2 decades or more, right, in the military, they are, they get on with their lives with a hell of a lot of preparation. And there's a good reason for it, because the investment by the military, the investment by the NFL organization has been to prepare you. Here's my saying is that resonates with me, and that I learned about football, and it applies to many other areas of life. As a football player, I had a coaching staff. I had a positional coach. I was a defensive end, so I had a defensive line coach, and then I had above him was a defensive coordinator, and then above him is the head coach. And then you could say above him is a general manager who's putting all these pieces together. Not a single one of these people who's eminently qualified and highly respected, not a single one of these people can make a damn play for me. Not one play, not a tackle, not a sack, can't bat down a pass, nothing, nothing. So their job is singular. It's position me for success. And it's amazing how many coaches I had during my entire 20 years of playing contact football that couldn't do it, that sucked at it. And those are the hard lessons, but I embraced the ones that could do it. Think of it. You have one job, is to position that person for success. He gets to do all the hard fucking work, but you position him for success. The people, the men that enabled me to do that in fact positioned me for success in any area of my life, I'm eternally grateful for what they were able to do and able to help me. I, in return, attempt to help people that come to me when in the world of physical fitness and health for help. I realize I don't even state it to people generally, but I realize that above all, my job is to position these people for success. It's multi-dimensional. It's to stay positive. It's to give them realistic goals and pragmatic ways to exercise, etc. But at the end of the day, it boils down to me positioning them to succeed.
And I'm a big sports geek. So whenever I watch football, I don't ever watch the receivers or the DBs. I'm always watching the line, offensive or defensive line. And it's amazing to me how nose tackles and tackles, they'll gobble up blocks just for somebody else, and
Yep.
they never get they don't get the recognition that they deserve for gobbling up all those blocks for everybody else. But it's amazing when you say that if you have a team that goes to the Super Bowl, there's a reason why all those coaches are getting hired out, because they taught their men the right way. And a lot of people hate Belichick, but it's the Patriot way. And there's certain ways in business that even in business or in life, there's a way, like you said, when I put my uniform on the second time, I took pride in my uniform. It was who I was. So I totally understand where there's, like, in the military, it's whatever, Army, Navy, but in the NFL, it's the shield.
Yep.
You want to make that shield proud. So I have a lot of friends that were former tackles, and they're always the smartest guys that I've ever known were all on the lines, you know, because they got to know all the defenses. They got to know all the offenses. And I told my son, if you ever want to get rich, become a center.
Long snapper.
Yeah. Because you could have like a 19-year career.
Yeah. Long snap, kick, and punt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about Gilbert Brown in the Packers line back in the olden times.
Yeah.
And he would eat up 2 blockers. And if you tried to run off guard, he'd just stick his arm out and knock you down to pick up a tackle along the way. But he freed up so much movement in the defensive backfield because of him taking that on. In terms of, I wanted to bring this back to Pete, what he was saying earlier about being a pro. I know from my end of the game in combat, and you're right, Pete, it's the being a pro thing. I'm not scared when I go onto the battlefield, like I'm prepared. And if you're a pro, then you've already done the work. In my case, I already know which questions I need to ask no matter who I meet, and I can ask them quickly and there's no wasted effort, and I'm finely tuned. And that means I'm walking around the camp role-playing with myself, and it might look like I'm insane, but that's what I have to do so that when I go out and I've got 5 minutes with somebody, I'm not umming and ahhing and trying to figure out what to say. I am prepared. I'm not scared. I know what I have to do. I know what my job is. And my job specifically on a patrol is not to be a gun pointing, firing warrior. I can do those things. I need to be proficient and good at it so that when we go to the range, my peers see me shoot straight and know they can count on me. But my job is to do something totally different. I'm not surviving on force. I'm surviving on charm and trying to find things out that aren't supposed to be found out. What is being a pro for you, Richard, like in life? How does someone become a pro? What are the behind the scenes things, day to day, no shit that you have to be a pro at living?
First thing I just wanted to throw out there, because it just came to my mind. Like, I've been in the health and fitness industry since 1986. And Arnold was the guy that I always kind of looked up to. And when he went to go for all his 7 Olympias, he said, I did all the work. Now I just got to show up to get my trophy because I already put in all the work.
That's right.
And so, I think for me is you got to pick your mentors and pick them wisely. And find somebody that you look up to, or somebody that not emulate, but somebody that you can say, hey, if I can have a life, I'd want his life, and stick around those people. Now, you're going to get the people that are on here. Oh, I don't have mentors in my life. I don't know anybody, but I've been studying a lot about the mind lately. And you know that your mind doesn't know the difference whether you're talking to somebody face to face or listening to them on a podcast. The brain waves are the same. So, like Ed Milet is my mentor for my kind of podcast and life I would love to lead one day. But my mind doesn't know that Ed's not sitting next to me. So fill your mind with the things that you want. Because there's always, like I was always told, even in sports, there's you got 2 wolves on your shoulders. The one that's going to be the heaviest is the one you feed the most. So if you want to succeed, you got to listen to successful things, and you got to put away stuff that's not so successful. So if you're watching Fox News for 18 hours a day and you're not getting ahead in life, or you're watching the news and you're hanging out with your cousin Joe and he's got no life, and guess what? You're not going to win. And, somebody told me today, he was an 8-figure earner. And he said, you are the room that you're in. So if you're not in a good room, and if you're the smartest one in the room, you need to get a better room.
Pretty damn good. Hey, everybody can find out everything about Richard on his website, richardkaufman.net. You can find his podcast. It's pretty simple, but if you go there, you can find it as well. Look, I appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do. I think the world of your efforts to help make the world a better place and putting others before yourself. I can tell that you're I can tell that you're wired right, and you'll be damned if you're going to be damned by life. You're going to go after it and go get it. And I also wanted to say thanks to Pete too for joining me on this thing.
Thank you.
I'm always inspired by his look. If you guys aren't watching his Getting Better 30 seconds at a time videos, get on Instagram, start following that stuff, get on LinkedIn and start following it, because if you feel in any way unmotivated, go watch the handsomer of the 2 Petes here today. And I don't say that often. But you're gonna love Pete Koch's work. I appreciate both of you guys. I'm just filled up with love right now. I'm sorry. I just have to tell you guys I care about you.
Yeah,
I got a question for Pete.
yeah.
What team cut you? And I'm asking for a reason because I consider Tom Brady probably the greatest NFL player of all, the greatest quarterback of all time.
Mhm.
And in every interview, he talks about being picked last. That's what drives him, and that was his motivator. So what team cut you?
Cincinnati Bengals. So they drafted me, and they cut me in training camp the next year, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It felt like the most horrific thing that ever happened to me at the time, but that gave me a new lease on life with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I was there for 4 seasons, and then I finished with at that time it was the Los Angeles Raiders. That was the Howie Long, Marcus Allen. Those were my teammates on that team. And that was a fantastic place for me to finish. So it was all a blessing.
I would love to just sit and talk with you sometime, just on the phone and be about sports.
Yeah, well, let's not waste it. I'd love to talk about it on your show. I look forward to that, Richard.
Cool. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, folks, stand by for a second. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Any final words from either of you?
Just remember, April 3rd, we're having a mental health summit. It's totally free. It's going to be via Zoom or StreamYard. We haven't figured it out yet. But if you just hashtag today I decide, it'll come up with the information. It's 100% free, and it's for anybody that's struggling with anything health, fitness, addiction, or mindset issues.
And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. All right, I'm going to run this video. Stand by.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down Show.